Good old dad. He's a restless soul with a heart of gold and endless dad jokes. He's a man that teaches you to make hay while the sun is shining, comforts you when the storm clouds are rolling in, and tells you to love your mama because no one will love you in the same way she does. But more and more it seems that fatherhood, as it exists in reality, is under attack. Let's see what the TV executives have to say.
Being a dad, I just love this story, and thankfully some dads took action. Basically, what do they want for Father's Day? For the media to stop portraying dads as buffoons, doofus dads, right?
We're going to start off with an ad that aired earlier this year that was just obviously offensive. Take a look here.
To prove Huggies diapers and wipes can handle anything, we put them to the toughest test imaginable. Dads, alone with their babies, in one house, for 5 days.
Can't reach it, Dad. You have to come up another rung. My ears are popping.
He's lazy, he's immature, he's stupid, he's a marginal at best father. You know, his daughter has no respect for him.
Which is why not everybody loves Raymond.
Grandma's helping me with my homework.
Oh. Want me to help?
That's all right, dear. We're working on grammar right now.
Being a dad can be a thankless job. If you don't agree, consider this. More long-distance calls are made on Mother's Day than any other day of the year. The single biggest day for collect calls? You got it. Father's Day.
Why do TV executives go out of their way to show either fatherless homes or homes where fathers are present but are portrayed as buffoons, oafish, and not particularly smart? There is no doubt that fathers in the home, especially active and involved fathers, help children overcome what fatherless children fall victim to more readily. Strong, active father participation leads to fewer behavioral issues for boys and fewer psychological issues for girls. 47% of children in fatherless homes are more likely to live in poverty. These are just a few statistics gathered by the National Fatherhood Initiative. Yet there seems to be a concerted effort to attack and demean fatherhood on TV, especially networks that cater to children, like Disney, Nickelodeon, and Freeform, formerly known as ABC Family, if you can believe that or not. And this has gone on for years. But why?
Hey there, family. I'm in the studio with Rebecca Dykeman. How you doing, Rebecca?
I'm good, Daryl. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well. We got a great work ahead of us and a great subject. These stupid, dumb dads. So before we get into it, tell us a little about yourself.
Okay. I'm a 51-year-old mom of a 13-year-old boy, and I'm a wife. And I can't say much about a career because I pretty much do whatever comes along to keep me available to my 13-year-old son and to my husband. I'm a wife and a mom first, and anything else other than being a child of God is second.
Oh, amen, amen. Okay, well, we are here. Folks, just for full disclosure, Rebecca and I, we've known each other for a while, and we met on the job, and she's been a friend ever since. Because she's just one of those people that you just got to be around and partake with. And so we became fast friends, and we got to start to notice some of the same things. And this is one of those issues, those stupid dumb dads, or at least this is what the powers that be, the media, the corporates, the cultists, will have us believe, and it's really a battle against the family. And we're in the midst of that battle because we got to tear it down for one reason or another, and we'll get into all of that. But just so you guys know, I am a father. I have an 18-year-old just off to college by the grace of God. Managed to help her maneuver through these most formative of years. Amidst all of these things that we're starting to see now, and especially with the attacks on fatherhood specifically. And the first time I noticed this was me actually being an involved father, sitting down with my daughter when she was very little, and watching the programs on television. I had no agenda. I wasn't looking out for anything. These were kiddie shows. So there was really nothing that was like piquing my curiosity at the time. But I started detecting a trend. And that trend was all the dads were dumb. I mean, every one of them. They were bumbling idiots, and the wife and or mother had all the answers, was in firm command of the family, in firm command of the kids, and treated the dad like a child. And I said, okay, maybe this is just this show. And then the next show would come on, and same thing. And then the next show, and then the next show. And then I started noticing the commercials, and then so originally it started really on the Disney Channel. Your child's 6, 7 years old. That's the go-to. And then branched out to other channels as well. So that was my, and I guess this would have been, my daughter's 18. I guess this would have been about 12 years ago. I started noticing this trend in earnest. And you would think over the past 12 years it would have slowed down some, but it has only accelerated, and it's gotten worse. And even though people are beginning to point it out more and more, it doesn't seem to stop. What has been your experience?
Yeah, so I didn't really begin to notice it until around 2016. And the reason being is prior to 2016, we lived in a different state. We had really active lives. We went to the park every day. We didn't spend much time in the house watching TV. And it wasn't until 2016 that we moved to South Florida. We moved into a house that was a fixer-upper. And so my husband and I spent a lot of time fixing up the house. And we said, sure, you can watch TV while we work. And that was the beginning of us opening our eyes as to what was on television. And much like you, we would hear something and we would think it was a one-off, or we would think it's just that show. And the more we sat down and listened, and the more we paid attention to the themes, we realized this is not a one-off. This is an agenda.
Yeah.
This is how these people who are producing these shows either perceive dads or want people to perceive dads. But we opened up our ears and we opened up our eyes, and we used a lot of that as an opportunity to have discussions with Gabe about how did he feel about the show? How did he feel about the way that he was seeing things being portrayed? Did he think that that was appropriate or normal or the way things actually are? But then we noticed he started to behave differently toward both myself and my husband. He became disrespectful. He began, and specifically at my husband, he began to act as though my husband didn't know anything. He talked back. He would talk back and lash out to my husband in a way that he did not talk back and lash out to me. And it kind of became obvious that something was influencing him. We weren't sure where it was coming from. And at one point, my husband even thought maybe it was me poisoning the well, because how come he's acting this way toward you and not me?
Wow, I'm not aware of that influence.
And I thought, I'm not doing this. I have nothing to gain from him disrespecting you and not me. We're a team, we're a team.
Yeah.
This is not me. But it took a while for us to figure it out. I feel like we were asleep. And we were really hard-headed, and we just didn't believe. We didn't want to believe what we were hearing and seeing.
And it seems so innocuous because it's couched in humor, and anything we can get you to laugh at can suddenly become okay. Because another side issue of television programming and programming. They call it programming for a reason.
Yep.
The side issue with television programming is it has led to the acceptance of sociopathic behavior. And this is just an offshoot of that. And so the other thing that is profound is, Gabe would respond to your husband differently from the way he would respond to you. And the other thing about the kids in these shows where they behaved and performed more like adults.
Yes.
That were on equal footing with the dad.
I would argue higher footing than the dad.
Higher foot, absolutely, because they ran the house. Mm-hmm. They outside of when Mama finally decided to put her foot down, and then they would back down. But that would never happen with Dad. And this became a parenting prototype. I was watching a commercial just today. It was just kind of playing in the background. It was a Takis commercial, and I wouldn't know anything about this if it wasn't for my daughter. Because when she was in middle school, she was all about Takis. And there's a voiceover in it, and it's obviously a teenage girl annoyed with her mother. The mother was talking to the folks in the audience, speaking to us, the consumer, using slang or colloquials or whatever, and it was annoying the daughter because I guess the mom's just too old to be using these words, and she was just like, "Oh, mom, just mom, please be quiet and just get me some Takis." And I'm like, but 99% of people listening to that would be like, "That's acceptable behavior."
Yeah.
And it is not. And so one of the in my research, I pulled up some. One of the most egregious commercials in the past few years was a Huggies commercial, of all things. And the moms, they had these 5 babies, and there was 5 moms. These babies were in a high chair, and the moms were going to go away for a week just to get away because they needed some time off away from the kids. Okay, all right, no problem. But we're going to leave them with these 5 dads. And we're going to see how this goes. Excuse me? We're going to see how this goes? What do you mean this? Because the insinuation is, of course, dads can't take care of their babies.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm going to push back on that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not in a way you would disagree with. I would argue that this programming, to some degree, has affected dads' willingness, ability, and confidence to be a great caregiver to their children, or to live into the role that they should have as caregivers to their children. I would argue that this programming influences a lot of young dads almost as much as it influences the children. I might even argue that it influences the moms about who the dad should and shouldn't be.
I will not disagree with you about that. The programming is for everyone. Yeah. It's not just for one person or another. It's for the mom. It's for the dad. Yeah. It's for grandparents. Unfortunately, we have grandparents that are participating in I'll say it's foolishness. Mm-hmm. It's foolishness. How dare you be so strict when all you're doing is correcting negative behavior? Mm-hmm. Correcting negative behavior is now just one of the dirtiest things that you can do.
Right.
As a father. That's spare the rod, spoil the child. That's my take on it. And yeah, I'm not going to deviate mm-hmm. from that. Part of fatherhood is protection. The protection and security of the family unit.
Yep.
And part of that protection is making sure, to the best of your ability, of course, being human beings that we are, endowed with free will by the Creator. Sometimes you go off and you do your own, but that doesn't mean you don't teach.
Right.
And you have to teach and you have to correct. How else do you set up a child for success in life if you don't teach them that you can't do whatever you feel like doing because it may lead to this negative outcome or that negative outcome? Listen and participate.
You mean consequences?
Oh, what's that?
Exactly.
You end up with children who turn into adults who can do no wrong.
Correct.
and they become 20 and 30 somethings, and now we're getting ready to head into 40 somethings, and it baffles my mind that we have an entire generation, or two generations at this point, of adults who I call them the "don't judge me" generations. You know, this whole I'm going to do what I do, and no matter how wrong I am or how wrong you think I am, say nothing to me. Because, well, you know, I didn't grow up with anybody telling me I was wrong about the things I was doing, so I'm certainly not going to take it from you.
Well, and there's no coping mechanism either to deal with things that don't necessarily go the way that they hoped or planned. There's a huge inability to cope, and I think that that's probably one of the reasons why, you know, these last two generations that we speak about are riddled with anxiety and depression and anger issues, and they're medicated, and they have no coping mechanism for how to deal with things that are not going the way that they want.
And you know who's really good at helping kids with that?
TV.
Boom. Fathers.
In real life, yeah, like when we were growing up,
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because
pick yourself up, son. Hey, daughter, it's okay.
Yeah.
Let me tell you how to get past this.
Well, think about the programming when we were growing up, and I think about that, and like we grew up with the Brady Bunch, the Waltons, the Cosby Show, Happy Days, where when the children were experiencing some sort of dilemma or problem or crossroads, they sought out Dad for his wisdom, for his advice. That was where they went first. They didn't run to their friendship circles. They didn't run to, didn't even run to mom. Although the girls would sometimes run to mom first. Yeah. But these children sought out Dad. And Dad was not a buffoon. He was not a fool. He was full of sound advice. He didn't tell them what to do. He helped them critically think through their problem and help them reach the conclusion that they would reach if they were thinking logically through it. He taught them how to figure it out, how to cope, how to adjust.
As my daughter got older, I like to say it got easier because I could reason with her more. But the only reason, partly the only reason for that was she understood, period, point blank, end of discussion, there would be consequences.
Yes.
There would be consequences. And I would challenge anyone to suggest I did not love my daughter. In fact, my love for my daughter is what made the consequences so important.
Exactly.
So important, because mama's not going to always be there, and daddy's not going to always be there. And you alluded to the fact earlier about depression, mental health issues. That's all over the place now. It's mental health issues here, mental health issues there. Well, coping mechanisms are very important. Part of those coping mechanisms are consequences for negative behavior.
Correct.
And then you can pull yourself up when you're an adult, because at some point you start having kids. How do you help them? And that's how we end up with multiple generations of people who can't help themselves.
The generational curse.
You've been cursed with a curse.
Yeah.
And it is perpetual, and the programming continues.
Yes.
And so we're currently bringing up the next generation who will not be able to cope when things go wrong. That brings me to and here, this is a very recent example. I don't know, have you ever seen the Visible commercials? It's a cell phone. It's for cell phone coverage. It's on television now, and they have this couple that got married for the family plan. That's why they got married.
Oh, well, of course, because that makes sense.
Yeah. They got married for the family plan. And the kids are running amok in this house. This one girl is painting her face with frosting from the cake that she apparently put her hands in. You got one kid in the background on the kitchen counter, another one that's just hitting the mom in the head with a beach ball. Yeah, because
appropriate.
All of this is just normal. That's how most families operate, right? And of course, it's like, oh, well, Daryl, it's just a comedic way of. I'm sorry, this is happening way too often for it to just be comedy.
And it's turning into reality.
It's already reality. Now we're just perpetuating it, and normalizing it. And again, it goes back to, I can get you to accept what I'm doing if I make you laugh.
Exactly.
So when you say, oh, it's just a comedy, you've missed the point.
Yep.
The point is, you found that acceptable because you laughed at it.
Right.
Okay? Now, switch to the sister of this woman who married this dude for the family plan.
Right.
She's sitting there in this house. It's clean. It's pristine.
I know the commercial.
She's by herself. She's on the couch. She's all comfy. She's got a cup of whatever. She's drinking tea, coffee, whatever, her beverage of choice. No family needed, she proudly proclaims.
Proudly.
No family needed. That's where we are.
Yeah. We glorify the lack of family.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we glorify the choice to not have family, the choice to not start a family, the choice to not expand a family, the choice to end the family.
Yeah. Before it even begins. So let's get into this. Yes, I choose single motherhood. Now, this is an article written, this is from 2020. So not that old. Written by Leah Campbell. She's a writer. She apparently lives out in Alaska. It's interesting because this article is, yes, I choose single motherhood. So this is a personal tale, okay? But it says here, fact checked. You can't make this stuff up. Fact check. What are you checking?
Somebody's personal story. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's a freelance writer, so we but I'm not going to read the entire article, but there's a few highlights here. So she's 37. 37. Well, she's 37 now, so she would have been 37 2 years ago. So she's 39 now, and she's never been married. This is what she's saying. 37 at the time of writing. Never been married. I never lived with a partner, which. We won't even get into that term, but we'll
rabbit hole.
We'll keep it moving.
Yeah.
And I've never had a relationship endure beyond the 6-month point. 37 years on this earth, and never had a relationship last more than 6 months. I'm already not listening to you. Yeah. I've already tuned you out.
But right there, you can already see a person's inability to cope with difficult situations, things that don't go the way that you expected them to go, consequences for your actions, that if you can't last more than 6 months, where's your coping mechanism?
None. And as we get deeper into this article, you'll understand why. She goes on to say, I've always had a really hard time envisioning myself as a wife. Okay. All right. So she admits that single motherhood is not simple. She acquiesced to that point. She said, but there's still a stigma surrounding single mothers in society today. I disagree. I think single motherhood has been praised. It's almost a badge of honor.
Agreed.
At this point. And she says they're often seen as down on their luck women with bad taste in partners. No, when single motherhood, before it evolved into what it is today, if you were a single mother, it's because your husband abandoned you and the children, or he passed away. And so, yeah, you were petty.
Or he got locked up.
Right. Or he went to prison.
Yeah.
Well, I would consider that abandonment.
Yeah.
You know.
Sure.
So yes, you were petty. You were, people's hearts did go out to you because you now find yourself in a situation where you had a spouse in the home to help raise your children, and now you don't. But that was not by choice. And so people did reach out to you. And that's what a decent society does. Oh my goodness, Peggy Sue's in trouble because, Johnny passed away in a car accident. We're going to have to help her, get through this tough time.
That's biblical.
Yes. But fast forward to today, and they're often seen as down on their luck women with bad taste in partners who can't possibly dig their way out of the abyss. There are folks who would say, well, you put yourself in this position willingly. And so where is or I should say, why? Why would you be concerned about stigma? Why would you be concerned about what people think of you when this is the choice you've made?
Right.
And so this is what we call being double-minded. This is not a single-minded person. This is a person who is double-minded. This is a female who is double-minded, even as she writes this article. And it's on full display here. I'm what you would call, she goes and says, I'm what you would call a single mom by choice. We're a growing demographic of women, typically well-educated and as successful in our careers as we are unsuccessful in love. Is this sort of badge of honor?
Oh. I don't even know where to start on that. There's a lot to say about that. Anyway, I won't interrupt.
No, this is a free-flowing program here.
Unsuccessful in love. Poor me.
Yes.
Poor me.
Yes.
I'm so smart and I'm so successful.
Yes.
But I just keep rolling the wrong dice when it comes to love.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody who would tell you that marriage is easy. I don't know anybody who would say relationships are easy. In fact, above all else, they're work.
Yeah.
And there's not luck and no luck.
Absolutely.
There's just not. It's what you're willing to put into it.
You took the words right out of my mouth. It's what you put into it. It's what you put into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't. There's no luck and there's no unlucky. There's. Are you willing to put yourself on hold?
Wrong generation.
Yeah. I apologize. Why'd I even go there?
Uh-huh.
She goes on to say this. She goes on to cite research that I couldn't find a reference to, that our kids, single mom kids, turn out just as well as those raised in two-parent homes. Just as well. I could not find the research. I looked.
Oh, I can. I lived the research. I used to work in the Federal Bureau of Prisons around a bunch of inmates who would tell you that their lives would be a whole lot different had they had a father in the home.
Oh, see, that's research opposite of what she found. I couldn't find her research where they come out just as well.
Yeah.
I could not find that anywhere.
No.
I looked.
No.
I looked diligently.
I had a whole prison full of inmates who would have told you otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's that. So she's... okay. I don't have to convince anyone to follow my preferred methods of discipline or motivation or talking about the world at large. What she's referencing here is she doesn't have to be with anyone and have to explain herself to the father. So she'd rather be alone so she can implement the raising of this child the way she wants to raise this child, which to me is my way or the highway.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the great thing about two parents is the accountability.
And that's what's missing when you only have one set of ideas in the house.
Yeah.
Now, yes, you ought to have that conversation prior to having children. What is the discipline is going to look like? Where are they going to go to school? What's going to happen when they try to pit me against you and you against me?
And they will.
Absolutely, it's coming. They are going. It will happen. These are conversations that don't happen very often. We're too worried about what's your Insta and what's your credit score and all these other things that just does not matter in the grand scheme of things. Right. When it comes to husband, wife, children. We're not asking the right questions. I get to raise my daughter, back to the article, I get to raise my daughter exactly as I see best without worrying about anyone else's opinion or say. And that's something even my friends in the closest of parenting partnerships can't say. Okay. Back to the stupid, dumb dads.
Because he's not a partner in this, and I don't mean partner in the way that it's thrown around today. I mean like a partnership in parenting. He is another person to take care of. He's another mess to clean up. He's another mouth to feed because I'm more successful than he is. I'm smarter than he is. I just have to, I have to guide him along. He can't do anything without me. Now I have 2 children.
Yeah. Guess who picked him?
Yeah, well.
There's that.
Yeah.
Guess who picked him? And listen, birds of a feather tend to flock together.
Amen.
Generally speaking, if you attract a mess, you are a mess.
Yeah.
Because people who aren't messy get out of Dodge when they come across somebody who is messy. They don't hang around. It doesn't take long.
Yeah.
It does not take long at all. My child won't grow up stuck between 2 warring parents who can't seem to find a way to put her first.
So the positioning there is obvious. There is no mom and dad at the top, and that love coming first, and then the child coming out of that. The child is first, but there's also the assumption that there would not be consensus in parenting, that hers would be the superior way of doing things.
Absolutely.
And that he would just have to come along, or she would have to drag him along.
Right.
That there just wouldn't, or that it dismisses the possibility that he would be the superior parent, and he would have a few things he could actually teach her.
My way or the highway.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the same article, mind you. This is the same article. Check this out. She's referencing in this next portion having to make health decisions for her daughter, because apparently the daughter is going through some significant health decisions. And she says, I yearn for someone by my side who was as deeply invested in her health and well-being as I was. Every time I have to make a medical decision and my anxiety-riddled mind struggles to land on the right thing to do, I wish there was someone else around who cared about her as much as I do. Someone who could make those decisions when I can't. Did she just negate the premise of her article?
Yes and no. The no comes from she only wants him there when she can't.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, otherwise she's content to make those heart-wrenching, awful decisions. But just in the event that one's too tough or too complicated or too hard, she wishes there was somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
But, the likelihood of her actually needing that is probably pretty low.
Almost like a butler husband.
Butler husband.
Yeah, you pick up the pieces I don't feel like picking up.
Right.
You go dust.
Yeah.
I don't feel like dusting this. I don't want to make this decision right now. You come make this decision, and it better be the right one. Yeah. And if it's not, you're going to hear from me, because just based on the way this article is written, the only person who would be at war would be her.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's when you learn about some consequences. Because if she didn't like the decision that he made, now all of a sudden you're going to see what a consequence looks like in the house. Be the only consequence you would see.
You know, and I don't know this lady personally. I can only go by what she decided to write and publish and put out there for me to find it. So I have to laugh. I have to laugh. As an introvert, and this is the last piece, those nightly hours being mine and mine alone are an act of self-love. I know I would miss if I had a partner demanding my attention instead. No greater love has a man than this. And therefore, the greatest love of all is to be willing to lay down your life for your friends. That would include your husband. She's not willing to lay down her life.
No.
For anyone.
No.
Because self-love is her love, but she does not understand that the greatest love is when you lay yourself aside, what you want in the moment. Your needs are met. You're not hungry, you got shelter, you got clothes on your back. Your needs are met. Not everything else are wants and desires, and you're not willing to lay that aside ever. This is why this lady cannot make it past the 6-month mark in any relationship.
Right.
Now, but so she chooses single motherhood. Now here's the question. What example is she setting for the daughter?
Oh, I could tell you right now. I mean, daughters do as they see their mothers do, and boys do as they see their dads do. And
or boys do what they see their mothers do if they're living in a single mother home.
That's true. That's true. Or they seek role models outside the home that are, what they might deem as sufficient. But yeah, I mean, I think what you may see is a, what did we speak about earlier? Generational curse.
Yeah, it's coming.
Potentially a young woman down the road who may not be able to keep a relationship going for longer than 6 months, who may seek to have a child and raise that child alone by choice. I mean, there's not a lot of mystery to it.
There's not. And then that's a perfect segue, and this particular article is a perfect segue into some of the research I could not find that she was supposedly citing, and there's no bibliograph, there are no footnotes. But I tried to find it anyway, could not.
Okay.
But what I did find, children are 47% more likely to live in poverty when there's no father in the home. And right now, well, this is as of 2019, 19.5 million kids fit in that category right now. Because, we have corporatocracies and governments, and I'm gonna go there. Churches who have elevated single motherhood to the detriment of children.
Sure.
Yeah, to the detriment of them. This is something I did not know this, and I was thankful that I actually had to do some research into some of these numbers. But the first 28 days of life after a child is born is precarious. A lot of people take it for granted unless you've experienced this. But there's infants are 4 times more likely to experience, or mothers are 4 times more likely to experience infant mortality within the first 28 days when no father's around.
Really?
4 times more likely.
Wow.
That all by itself. You care about your child, you have a father around.
Yeah.
A multiple of 4.
Is there any unpacking of that statistic? I'm curious about that statistic. Like if they break it down as to specific causes of, or if that's just
no. That particular statistic was not unpacked, but I will say this: if you go back to the first statistic, and if you have a 47% higher chance of being born in poverty.
Yeah.
Without a father present, then it stands to reason that infant mortality would go up. Because poverty is hard on everyone, especially infants and old people.
Yes, I'm learning that firsthand. Right now.
Infants and old people is devastating. Poverty is devastating on infants and older folks. So I think the two statistics go hand in hand. But you raise a good point. I might want to try to unpack that a little bit more, but because of that 4x number
that's huge.
But this is and just for reference, this is all from the National Fatherhood Initiative. They did a very deep study on fatherhood and the effects of fatherlessness in the home. No father in the home, children are twice as likely to be obese.
You can break that. I mean, you can follow the logic through on that one and break it down.
You can, and I'll say this because I grew up in a single mother home, and I can tell you what Mom didn't have energy to do when she got home. She wasn't chasing us around the park. She wasn't bike riding. She wasn't throwing the ball. She was not taking us to, rock climbing or any of those things. Because when Mom walked through the door, it was time to get some rest. So there was none of those extra curricular activities. So twice as likely, that makes perfect sense.
Go watch a TV program. Go play your video games. Go read a book.
So, and here's where, when I look at Leah's article, here's where my heart breaks. Because you mentioned it earlier about mental health issues and things of that nature. But when we get to this, I'm looking at Leah and I'm going, I think you missed the boat big time, and you're doing your daughter a significant disservice. They experience psychological issues more often than girls who have fathers at home do. And it tortures me because I know you see folks going through mental health issues and they're experiencing what they're experiencing. There's no one's going to dismiss what their experience is.
Right.
But they're also, it makes you wonder, was there a father present? Because it seems to be more prolific these days. I mean, since 1968, nationwide, we now have about 30% of children who do not live with a father. And in the Black community, it's higher than that. It's closer to 42%, actually. I know it's 48%. 48%. 48.
Almost half.
48%, yes, live in a household where no father is present. And and we're really wondering about mental health issues.
Mm-hmm.
You know, are we really? Because the same folks who will make these commercials and do these benefits for mental health issues, never hear them speak about fatherhood.
Well, they're the same people who are on the side of tearing the family apart.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, they're not looking for real solutions.
No.
They're looking to sell the next medication. They're not looking for solutions, because if they were, the solution is all around.
Right.
It's all around us.
Yeah, it's easily in our faces. Increased instances of behavior issues in boys.
Oh, yeah.
Of course. Girls are 7 times more likely to experience a pregnancy in their teenage years when there's no father around. 7x.
Now, does that statistic hold true for girls raised by a father without a mother around?
So the reverse was not done.
Okay.
I actually read a few. It's 2 studies where what was happening to children in the home when they were raised by a single father, but those 2 they're not even done yet. And I'm not saying that there isn't a study out there that exists that covers that. I wasn't able to find one because I was curious. I was curious about that.
Yeah.
But it also doesn't surprise me because the focus has been on the mother forever.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
You know, I shouldn't say forever. That's a little too tongue in cheek, but at least the past, 30, 40 years is the focus has been on the mother. So I'm not surprised I couldn't really find any statistics on that. The only thing I really was able to find was that the number of single fathers has doubled since the 80s, and it went from 2% to 4%. Not a significant number. 2% was not significant. 4% isn't when it comes to the totality of single parents.
Right.
But that just means 96% of all single parents are, moms.
Yeah.
And so if you look at this 7 times more likely, and I'm no statistician. I'm pretty sure some brainiac can look at that and kind of massage the numbers to come up with, how many of those girls live with fathers. But that number is staggering.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, my upbringing was that when my mom and dad divorced, when I was a young teenager, myself and my sisters went with my dad. My mom was not present. And not only was she not present, but she was disengaged for many years leading up to that, out doing everything else you could imagine except mothering and being a wife. So we grew up under the care of our dad. It reminds me a lot of the way that you are with your daughter and the way that my dad was with us. He was probably softer than you. He probably needed to be a little firmer than he was. But, we come with our whole separate set of brokenness and baggage from having an absent mother, but having a great dad who filled in the gaps anywhere that he could. He took us prom dress shopping. He came to soccer games. He took us on our first dates to the movie theaters. He did all that. But there was still no mom.
Yeah, no, and that situation's not.
And so it's funny because when you say what these statistics are, I can see some of that same carnage in my own life and in the life of my sisters with an absent mother.
Absolutely, and so I'm glad you shared that, because these statistics don't imply, and I know people will walk away from this like, oh, it's just bashing mothers. No, these statistics point out that 2 parents is better than 1. And that is the point of the Fatherhood Initiative. And it's not even just to say, hey, moms, you need to make sure you have a father present for your children, it's also, hey, dads, this is what is happening when you're not there.
Right. Right. But we do, for some reason, and I think you're right to call out the churches, we do kind of lift moms up on a pedestal who raise children on their own.
Yeah.
You know, we don't ask any questions, we don't push back, we don't challenge it. I remember in a church that I used to go to, we used to do outreach to a home for, I don't think they were unwed mothers as much as they were just moms raising children on their own. I don't know what the status of the dads were, and why do I not know? You know, I never asked. I never challenged. I never pushed back. I never asked to hear anybody's story. But I wouldn't be surprised if among them there may have been relationships, that parental relationships, husband-wife relationships, or things that could have become that were salvageable. But in this world where we lift up and glorify single moms, it was just easier to walk away, you know? But I don't know, I mean, guilty. When you said, and churches, I felt convicted because I thought to myself, yeah, you know, for the probably 2 years that I was involved in that group home of women with children, I didn't ask any questions. I didn't ask. I just presumed the worst of the dad and the best of the mom.
Yeah, yeah.
And shame on me.
Well, that's part of programming.
Well, yeah, but I lived the alternate life. And yet the programming still prevailed.
Yeah. Yeah, I grew up in a church that was full of single mothers. I'm thinking now, and I'm like, almost none of my friends at church have fathers present in their lives.
Yeah.
And I don't recall anyone saying, hey, let's get together and figure out what's going on. Mm-hmm. You know, an assumption was made, just like you said, an assumption was made.
Yeah.
And the benefit of the doubt went to mom.
Yeah.
And here's these deadbeat dads, because before stupid dumb dads, it was deadbeat dads.
It was.
Yeah.
It really was. And my dad was a dad raising 3 girls during the period of time where deadbeat dad was the phrase.
Absolutely.
And you know how bad a mom had to be for a judge back in the 80s.
Yeah.
To give custody to a dad.
Oh, yeah.
And my dad had legal custody.
You pretty much had to light up a crack pipe in court.
Yeah, and now my mom was not a drug user.
No, I'm not.
But she had her whole separate set of...
I'm sorry, I was not referencing your mother. I'm just saying the antics that was required to get a judge to say, Father, take your kids.
Right.
You had to do something like otherworldly.
Yeah, well, I mean, she abandoned.
Yeah.
But it's funny when you think of mom, dad, child abandonment, what do you think?
Dad.
You do.
Yeah.
That wasn't my experience.
Yeah.
But yet the programming still prevailed.
Yeah. You was living it and you still
prevailed.
Yeah. Because it's
that power.
Just constant in your...
It's so normalized that I assume that what I experienced was so the outlier.
Yeah.
And maybe it was. Maybe it's not. Because then there's you. You know? One of my closest friends live in the same experience that my dad lived.
Yeah.
You know? It really makes you think, like, about everything that you know. You think you're awake, you think you're alert to these programs, and yet, even when you're awake, you're brainwashed.
Yeah, well, it is subtle, but it forces you into a different level of awareness.
Yeah.
It definitely forces you into a different level, and that's fine. You live and learn. But I tell you what, we're gonna wrap this up with this thought. And one of the surest ways to undermine the family is to get rid of the dad. it has worked to near perfection in the Black community. And it has now spread to the community at large. So it no longer matters if you're white, Black, Hispanic, whatever other ethnicity you want to identify with. It no longer matters. It's pervasive because the programming is there. And here's the problem. Here's why you have to get rid of the dad, so you can break down the family.
Mm-hmm.
A strong family unit creates a strong community. A strong community creates a strong nation, one that is not ruled by mere ideology, one is not ruled by leftness or rightness, one is not ruled by wokeness or any of these other agendas that have crept into our lives. See, there's no control if you can't control the family unit. Rebecca, you spoke about Marxism, and this is how that slow, creeping, crawling death of the family ultimately leads to a form of socialism and then communism, where 99% of the people end up with absolutely nothing, and the people who help culminate these divisive instruments to degrade the family ends up coming in and taking everything from everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So moms, pick right. Dads, get to work. Stop bowing down. Stop acquiescing. Stop surrendering your role to groupthink and stand up, man up, and do what needs to be done. Rebecca, thank you so much for this discussion. We've unpacked a lot. There's a lot more to unpack, and I'm pretty sure hopefully you'll be back.
Sure.
And we'll continue. And this is good. This is good. This is necessary, and we'll keep it moving. Wonder how you can support Family on Trial? Hit that like button, share, and subscribe. And then come on over to familyontrial.org where the conversation continues.